It has been 2 years since the Clone Wars had ended, and many of the Jedi who fought in the war had been executed after being declared as traitors against the Republic. Some of the survivors of Order 66 had scattered across the galaxy as a way of going into hiding and also to survive from the Galactic Empires hunting them. Some of the survivors actually had even abandoned the ways of the Jedi. One of the young survivors was a young woman by the name Jasdin. Jasdin was actually given the rank as a Jedi Knight just shortly before the war had ended. She was actually given her own small troop of clone troopers during the war, but when the order was initiated, the troopers again turned against her, but she managed to survive by slashing down the clone troopers before they could even fire against her. But as she knows that she knew that there were a lot of other clone troopers on the planet, and she knew there was at least another handful of other Jedis on the planet, and as she tried to reach out to them, she didn't get any response for any of them. But as she was on the planet, she was actually fired upon by another clone trooper, but she managed to escape from being seriously hurt. But as she was fleeing through the dense forest, and as a way to hide herself from the clone troopers from finding her, she actually managed to find a cave and made the cave entrance to collapse so that they wouldn't even find her. She was inside the cave for almost a day or two, and after that, she had to find another way out from the cave to not being detected by those clone troopers. When she managed to find a small opening across the forest, she was afraid now that she would be detected by the clone troopers since the Order 66 had been initiated. She realized one other thing. If she had survived the Order 66, she wondered what about the other Jedi's on the planet. She knew that they were probably at risk to try even contact the other Jedi's if there was any other survivors. But she also wanted to get off this planet. But now that the clone troopers has likely had taken over every spaceport on the planet, so there was no way for her to smuggle herself on board a ship or even try to find one. She even had her own ship, but that ship was more likely being guarded by the clone troopers and escaping from her as a way to escape. But as she was walking through the forest, she was actually still hurt, and she needed some help, or at least medical help. But as she was coming through the small clearing, she noticed this was a ship in there standing, and this young man saw her and before she could even do anything, she collapsed on the ground unconscious. The next when she woke up, she was actually on board the ship, and the young man she saw that was not a clone trooper. It was just an ordinary man. She asked his name, and it turned out his name was Cordin. He asked her name, and that her name was Jasdin, and he asked if she was a Jedi. At first, she hesitated to what if to tell the truth or lie, because she didn't even know if Cordin would turn her over to the clone troopers. But since she was hurt and that he had saved her, for some reason she could actually feel that she could trust him. And she said that she were a Jedi. He said that he would not turn her over to the clone troopers because he actually had saved, or at least saved the other few Jedi during the war and others, and helped other Jedi being an informant or even a smuggler for them as needed. He trusted the Jedi because he didn't believe this being that the Jedi has been traitors and they were against the Republic. So she asked him what he was going to do now, and he told her that he is going to take her off the planet into safety. She was actually surprised, but since she was still hurt, there was nothing that she could have done anything against it. But she knew that that the clone troopers were likely to be actually would somehow scan the ship and demand to know who else is on board. He was said that the other person on board is his companion or his co-pilot or something like that when he said. So they did that. And they managed to leave the planet after being discovered by the clone troopers, and his lie turned out to work. And so for next, after all they had left the planet, Jasdin needed some really much serious medical treatment. And he knew that he couldn't just take her to almost any planet. But there was one planet that he could take her, and that was Corellia, his home planet. He told her that, and that was probably the most logical answer that he could even thought of. So he took her all the way to Corellia, and there he gave her the best treatment for her injury. And then he asked her what she will want to do now, since the Order was more likely than being destroyed, and if there were survivors, they were probably scattered across the galaxy. And he said that it wasn't worth the risk to contact any other survivors because it could draw attention to the clone troopers or any others. And Jasdin understood that. And since she had literally was grown up on Coruscant, and she probably didn't have any other world to go to, and so she decided to stay with Cordin for some time being. And they have been now traveling around in the galaxy for 2 years. And ever since then, Jasdin has never used the Force or her own lightsaber. Because for most of the risk, because she heard rumors of people that shown any Force sensitivity, either being as a Jedi survivor or any that just been born as Force sensitive sometimes after, or even hadn't been detected or found by the old Jedi Order. Could have been taken in by the Empire from questioning. So she tried to use the Force less as possible. But while on board her on the ship, she could keep up her training as a Jedi, because she had managed to collect some Jedi artifacts from the black markets or others, like a training droid or something like that. She had even tried to find any potential other answer survivors on a list, because she had a list of Jedis that she knew was across the galaxy at the time of the war, and each one of the worlds that she managed to, when she get to another world, try to find any information on the black market, and most of the list that she had all the names had been crossed over, meaning there were no those survivors. So she wondered how many survived of the Order. But during the time that Jasdin had been with Cordin, she actually had been getting closer to him. She had actually started to feel almost romantically attracted towards him. But she knew that would be against the Jedi Code. But considering that the Jedi Order no longer existed, and even if there were survivors, it was unlikely that she could just do something about it. It's not like the Jedi High Council would discover this and ban her from being a Jedi. But she decided to just trying to suppress these feelings, or at least hoping that these feelings would eventually fade away over time. But sadly, it didn't. Only got stronger and stronger. One time, when they were on the ship, traveling, had just left Corellia and going to some other planet for transport something. Cordin had asked her what would she do now after that she had been had been a survivor after almost 3 years or almost 2 years of on the run. And if she would still try to be as a Jedi but in secret, or if she would have to be had to find another simple lifestyle. Maybe settle down with someone, getting a family, and get married. He didn't even know exactly about the Jedi Code, what it says about. And after Jasdin had told him some of the basic rules about the Jedi Code said, but he also made a statement that since the Jedi Orders no longer existed, those rules shouldn't have been applied to her anymore. But still, she didn't even know what else to be saying about it. She really wanted to be with Cordin because he's a quite handsome, strong, and someone had saved her life. And even though that she has saved his life a couple of times for this 2 years period. But over time, there was a lot about even that Jasdin has started questioning about if she should stay with him or anymore. That she could probably find another her own ship and travel around in the galaxy and do the things as he has been doing. Transport medical supplies, food supplies, or even other things that other people needed. But the thing is, even if she did, she more likely would not have been able to find or even remain in contact with Cordin. Even when he had actually had asked her about this. She didn't even know, even if she did manage to find her ship of her own, she had no idea where to go, or which planet to settle down on, or if there's any planet that had been safe. Because during these 2 years, more and more planets had joined the Galactic Empire or was under their occupation control. It's like if any troopers or any survivors would have been found, would have been executed on the spot. And there was one way that Jasdin could even risk it. But she wanted to stay with him. And since she had barely no interest to travel around in the galaxy alone, so she had informed Cordin that she wanted to stay with him. But it was something else. She literally confessed her feelings towards him, and he was actually not surprised, because he told her that somehow he could sense that she had feelings for him. She was actually a bit surprised, but at least now she had admitted her feelings for him, and he actually admitted he had the same feelings for her. Even though they had quite recently, not for as long time. But during the time, Jasdin continued look around at the black market for any information of any other survivors, but after almost 2 more years had passed, she didn't come across any other survivors or any rumor, any information. Even though despite how many rumors that either she or Cordin came across during the travels to the different planets. And when she looked up into those information or those supposed rumors of a survivor turned out to be fake or not even real at all. She was almost giving up hope that eventually she could find any potential survivor out there. Even if she one time actually ran into another survivor when she was on a small planet. This particular survivor recognized her immediately. They actually had a short conversation when she asked this survivor if he had remained as a Jedi. He said no, because he was not wanted to risk that. Now he lived as just a simple farmer and actually had even settled down, having his own wife and a baby on the way. He suggested that she should do the same thing, abandon the way as a Jedi, just start a simple life as with Cordin. And even when she asked him if there was a possibility if any other survivors would start a new Jedi Order, if they reached out to him and asked him this way. But he said that he would decline the offer because now that he has a family of his own, he didn't want to risk his own unborn baby to be detected by the Empire if his baby was to be force sensitive. But she asked him, if your baby turned out to be force sensitive, what would you do? It's not like you don't can't you like can hide it from any other people. And there's always a big people, and despite how many small colonies you live on or big planets, there are always some people that on each planet that are loyal to the Empire. If they were discovered that your child is phone sensitive, they will be reported that to the Empire, and they will probably take him or your child and you away from this planet, and no one who what else would happen. That is one of the risks this particular survivor told her, that he is prepared to leave this planet to go somewhere else. But there was much on any planet that was not under the Empire's control yet. Since the Empire was expanding for almost any directions over any galaxy, soon there more likely wouldn't be any planet out there that wouldn't be safe for any survivors. But during the time, she said goodbye to the survivors and said if they cross their paths again, maybe one day. During this time, Jasdin actually and Cordin had been romantically involved. They both decided they couldn't just traveling around in a galaxy like this. So when they came back to Corellia one day, they decided they wanted to start their own cargo company. Even though Corellia is known for a lot of shipyards and other things, so they started a small cargo transport company, which they named Cordin Transport. They only had a few employees, but over time their company became more and more popular and more used. So they expanded their services to bigger, more ships, more people. Soon enough, they became a well-known, respectful cargo transport in the galaxy. But during the time when they were at the highest peak of their company, Jasdin actually had found out she was pregnant. And Cordin was quite happy to find out that he was going to be a father. But both had one realization of one fear. If this particular child would turn out to be force sensitive, Jasdin would have to train her child at early age in a way not to use the force in public, in a fear of the Empire's attention. The first child was born and they had a daughter which they named Ratira. Ratira wasn't born force sensitive, luckily. But she was growing up, she actually felt attracted to the same business that her parents was been doing. Sure, she was completely aware of her mom's Jedi heritage, and she had made a big oath, a promise, not to mention this to any other people, not for any reason. And even despite this, Ratira actually grew up like her parents. She was very loyal, strong-headed, and always, most of all, always stood up for her friends. Her father, Cordin, not only trained her how to be a pilot, but also trained her how to use simple weapons like a blaster, rifle, any kinds of things, just because if needed. And a few years after that Ratira was born, they have a son, which they named Leon. Leon, well, he wasn't either force sensitive either, which was another bonus for both of them, because they were afraid if their daughter or their son would have been force sensitive, but they weren't, luckily. And Leon, though, well, he wasn't much interested in the family's business, much as being a pilot, but he was more interested in as martial art. He actually was trained some of the basic martial arts skills that his mother had. But even though he also was aware of this, of her heritage as a Jedi, despite not that she now was a pilot and a mother, but she still was a Jedi by heart. She even trained her children some of the basic combat styles that the Jedi had. and of course even heard their father train them in some Corellian known famous hand-to-hand combat and other martial art. So both the children, Leon and Ratira, actually had combined Jedi and Corellian hand-to-hand martial art as one skill. So if people had asked them what skills and what style of martial art have been training, they were just being told to telling other people that they are just doing some Corellian martial art and well and some styles that they had themselves made up to improve the skills. And it worked. But Leon, he actually did work for in the family business, even though not as a pilot. But he was trained how to operate a ship if needed. And in fact, when he was around in his early 20s, he actually did actually step in to be a pilot if needed. And he didn't mind it from time to time though. But after a while, he actually got married himself with a Corellian woman, and they actually had 2 daughters. None of his daughters was force sensitive, but Ratira, she married a man from Corellia herself, and she had 2 daughters also, but none of them was force sensitive. But Leon and Ratira knew that even if their children would have been force sensitive, well, they would have at least a good trainer, a teacher in the force, which would have been their grandmother, Jasdin. Ever since Jasdin and Cordin met on that planet all those years ago, Jasdin was actually worried that the Empire would somehow manage to track her down, but she didn't. And in fact, despite every time she walked through passed by some stormtroopers or any Imperial officers, or even when she had to do some business with the Empire to transport something, she was always afraid some of them would recognize her or even find out that she was a survivor and perhaps kill her on the spot or even arrest her. But none of those things happened. But a lot of things did happen between Jasdin and Cordin, which were they got married and have a family of their own. Despite they living in a constant fear of being detected by the Empire, or any of the Empire's Jedi hunters. But despite this, she was just happy that never happened. And in fact, she was quite happy one day when she learned that the Empire has finally fallen. And some years later, she learned that Luke Skywalker, son of Anakin Skywalker, the same Anakin that she knew back years ago, had started a new Jedi Order. And he had reached out to any survivors to join his order. She was considering to join it. And even though Cordin actually gave her his permission, well, his blessing that she could, but since she had been part of the business for so long time, and she had even been as a Jedi for a long time, so she decided not to go. But she had reached out to Luke about her as being as a Jedi, but she had declined the offer to be as a joining them because now she has to be in a family business. Even that Luke understood that and told her that the offer still always remains if she changed her mind, but they would never do that. And this is how Jasdin and Cordin found a true love, got a family together. The end.